It's been over 4 decades since Christine turned a shiny red Plymouth Fury into one of horror's most terrifying villains. But what happened to the cast is even darker than the movie itself. From sudden deaths to shocking scandals, their lives over 42 years are filled with twists you won't believe. Let's find out. Harry Dean Stanton as Detective Rudy Junkins. Remember that tired detective in Christine, 1983, who kept circling back to Arnie's strange car? That was Harry Dean Stanton as Rudy Junkins. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't over the top. He was calm, suspicious, and weary. You could almost feel that this man had seen too much already, and that's what made the role so believable. But Harry's real battles were off-screen. Hollywood didn't know what to do with him. He wasn't handsome in the traditional way, so he was cast again and again as the drifter, the loner, the broken man in the background. Even when he appeared in The Godfather Part 2 and Alien, two of the biggest films of all time, his name barely registered with the mainstream audience. The truth is, Harry carried scars long before he ever stepped onto a set. He fought as a Marine in World War II and watched friends die around him. That trauma followed him home. He drank too much, smoked constantly, and battled years of depression. And yet, those same wounds gave him the ability to pour raw pain into his performances. His one shining moment came in Paris, Texas, 1984, where, finally, he was the leading man. Critics called it one of the most haunting performances in cinema. For a brief time, Stanton was celebrated the way he always deserved. But even after that, Hollywood still treated him as a character actor, never the star. It was a bittersweet victory. Harry Dean Stanton played Detective Rudy Junkins in Christine, 1983, when he was 57 years old. He passed away in 2017 at the age of 91 from heart-related illness. If he were alive today, he would be 99 years old. At the time of his death, his estimated net worth was around $5 million. Christine Belford as Regina Cunningham. In Christine, 1983, Christine Belford played Regina Cunningham, the sharp, controlling mother who tried to keep Arnie from slipping away. Her presence was cold but commanding, and she captured that delicate balance of a parent's fear wrapped in overbearing control. Belford's performance gave the film a dose of realism, grounding the supernatural horror in the very human struggle between parents and children. Behind the scenes, though, Belford's own life carried plenty of drama. In the 1980s, she went through a bitter divorce from her first husband. The custody battles that followed were devastating, pushing her into a spiral of depression that forced her to step away from acting for a time. Fame didn't protect her. It made the struggles even more public. Her career had highs, like appearances in The Rockford Files and Banachek, but those successes were shadowed by her personal pain. Stress led to heavy smoking, and later in life she developed chronic respiratory issues. For a woman who often played strong, unshakable mothers, her own battles left her far more fragile than audiences ever knew. And yet, Belford found resilience. She turned her pain into purpose, supporting charities that helped divorced women rebuild their lives. She worked less on screen after the 2000s, but in her own quiet way, she continued to fight for dignity and strength, not just in her characters, but in herself. Christine Belford played Regina Cunningham in Christine, 1983, when she was 34 years old. Today, in 2025, she is 76 years old, mostly retired, with an estimated net worth of around $2 million. Roberts Blossom as George LeBay. Do you remember the old man who warned Arnie about Christine's cursed past? That was Robert Blossom as George LeBay. With his worn-out voice and haunted stare, he gave the film a sense of chilling inevitability. He looked like someone who had already made peace with tragedy. And maybe that's because Blossom knew too much of it in his own life. Blossom's childhood was harsh. He grew up in poverty, often drifting between stage work and survival. His first wife was killed in a car accident in 1950, a trauma that left him shaken for life. To step into Christine years later, playing a man linked to a killer car, was more than acting. It was almost like reliving a nightmare that had scarred him decades earlier. He built his career slowly, becoming a familiar face in memorable supporting roles. You've seen him in Escape from Alcatraz, 1979, Home Alone, 1990, as the mysterious old man Marley, and Doc Hollywood, 1991. But for all his successes, Blossom never escaped a sense of isolation. He lived simply, almost reclusively, on a small farm in California, avoiding Hollywood's spotlight. Illness caught up with him later in life. Parkinson's disease and heart failure weakened him until his passing in 2011 at the age of 87. His was not a glamorous ending, but rather a quiet and painful one, far from the fame of Hollywood premieres. Roberts Blossom played George LeBay in Christine, 1983, when he was 60 years old. He died in 2011 at age 87, leaving behind an estimated net worth of about $1.5 million and a legacy of strange, unforgettable characters that mirrored his own lonely but extraordinary journey. Robert Prosky as Will Darnell. In Christine, 1983, Robert Prosky played Will Darnell, the gruff garage owner who gave Arnie a place to work, and a dangerous freedom to spiral deeper into the car's dark grip. With his booming voice and rough edges, Prosky brought a sense of gritty reality to the film, reminding us that horror doesn't just live in the supernatural, but in the human world of greed and control. But Prosky's real story began far from Hollywood lights. Born in 1930 to a Polish immigrant coal miner, he grew up in hardship. In 1950, he narrowly survived a mine explosion that killed several men. That brush with death left him with a lifelong fear of enclosed spaces, an ironic burden for a man who would spend his life performing in theaters and film sets. His career took off in his 50s, an unusually late start, but he made it count. Prosky stole scenes in The Natural, 1984, and became a fan favorite in L.A. Law. Yet even as success arrived, his personal life carried heartbreak. In 2000, he lost a son to cancer, a tragedy that weighed heavily on him and colored his later performances with even more depth and sadness. The cruelest twist came at the very end. In 2008, while rehearsing for a play, Prosky suddenly collapsed from heart failure and died at age 77. For a man who lived and breathed the stage, his death felt like a final, tragic performance. Robert Prosky played Will Darnell in Christine, 1983, when he was 53 years old. He passed away in 2008 at the age of 77 with an estimated net worth of around $3 million. Stephen Tash as Rich. He didn't have much screen time in Christine, 1983, but Stephen Tash made an impression as Rich, one of the bullies circling Arnie. With his sneering energy and cruel bravado, Tash fit perfectly into the gang that pushed Arnie further into Christine's deadly embrace. Off-screen, though, Tash's life was anything but easy. In the 1980s, at the very time his career might have taken off, he fell deep into cocaine addiction. The habit drained his finances, wrecked his marriage, and cost him custody of his child. By 1985, his life was spiraling out of control. Things only got worse in 1987 when a car accident left him with multiple broken bones and a chronic back injury. He was forced into rehab, but even after recovery, the pain followed him. Combined with heavy smoking that damaged his lungs, Tash's health became a constant uphill battle. Career opportunities slipped away. By the 1990s, he quietly retired from acting, remembered mostly for Christine and horror cult films like Waxwork, 1988. Yet, in an ironic twist, he turned his darkest struggle into a source of strength, working as an addiction counselor to help others fight the same demons he once faced. Stephen Tash played Rich in Christine, 1983, when he was 35 years old. Today, in 2025, he is 77 years old, retired and living quietly in Los Angeles with an estimated net worth of about $1 million. David Spielberg as Mr. Casey. You probably don't remember him as much as Arnie or Christine, But David Spielberg brought a quiet strength to Christine, 1983, as Mr. Casey, one of the teachers who stood as a voice of reason in Arnie's chaotic world. His presence wasn't loud, but it mattered. He was the kind of actor who could give even a small role depth and dignity. Yet Spielberg's real life was anything but calm. In the 1970s, while working on a documentary, he survived a terrifying small plane crash that left him with head injuries and migraines that plagued him for decades. Imagine trying to remember lines on set while battling blinding pain. That was his reality. His career stretched across familiar shows like Law and Order and The Brady Bunch, but stability came at a cost. Spielberg worked relentlessly, often to the point of exhaustion. The overwork strained his marriages, and he went through 2 divorces, both of them bitter, both of them tied to the pressures of Hollywood. The final blow came later in life. Diagnosed with metastatic prostate cancer in 2013, Spielberg endured years of grueling chemotherapy. Even as his body gave out, he kept acting, refusing to let illness silence him. In 2016, just after finishing his last role, he passed away at 77, leaving his family with grief that came far too suddenly. David Spielberg played Mr. Casey in Christine, 1983, when he was 44 years old. He died in 2016 at the age of 77, with an estimated net worth of about $2 million. Kelly Preston as Roseanne. She was only on screen briefly in Christine, 1983, but Kelly Preston lit it up with her youthful charm as Roseanne. At just 21, she radiated the kind of energy that made you believe she'd go on to become a star. And she did, with roles that carried her all the way to Hollywood's A-list. But Preston's road was scarred with tragedy. In 1986, during the filming of 52 Pickup, she was accidentally shot in the head in what was meant to be a prank. She survived, but the injury required brain surgery and left her with a permanent scar. For years, she downplayed it in interviews, but behind closed doors, the trauma was hard to shake. Her Hollywood life looked glamorous. Hits like Jerry Maguire and From Dusk Till Dawn made her a household name, but personal struggles often followed. She smoked heavily in her youth, something doctors later suggested may have increased her cancer risks. Her first marriage, to actor Kevin Gage, ended in a messy divorce amid allegations of abuse, leaving her shaken and distrustful. The cruelest twist came in 2018 when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Preston chose to keep it private, hiding her illness even from much of Hollywood. For 2 years, she endured treatments in silence, protecting her husband John Travolta and their children from the painful truth. When she passed away in 2020 at the age of 57, the news shocked the world. Kelly Preston played Roseanne in Christine, 1983, when she was 21 years old. She died in 2020 at the age of 57, leaving behind an estimated net worth of $20 million and a legacy of warmth, resilience, and heartbreaking silence. William Ostrander as Buddy Repperton. Every horror movie needs a bully, and in Christine, 1983, that bully was Buddy Repperton. With his swagger, wild hair, and constant sneer, William Ostrander nailed the role of the classic high school tormentor. He was cruel, reckless, and dangerous, and audiences loved to hate him. But real life came crashing down hard. Just 2 years after Christine, Ostrander was in a devastating car accident in 1985. He broke his leg, forcing him to pause his acting career. The physical pain turned into something darker, depression and a brief spiral into alcohol abuse. For a man who'd just landed his breakout role, it was a crushing setback. The troubles didn't stop there. His reckless driving habits got him into legal trouble more than once, and in 1992, a messy divorce left him drained emotionally and financially. Hollywood moved on without him, and by the mid-1990s, Ostrander walked away from acting altogether. But he didn't disappear. Instead, he reinvented himself. Moving to Napa Valley, he built a second career in the wine business, proving he could rise again after loss. Fans may still remember him as Buddy Repperton, but his real victory was creating a stable, successful life far from the chaos of Hollywood. William Ostrander played Buddy Repperton in Christine, 1983, when he was 24 years old. Today, in 2025, he is 66 years old, living quietly in California with an estimated net worth of around $4 million. Stuart Charno as Don Vandenberg. In Christine, 1983, Stuart Charno played Don Vandenberg, another member of Buddy's bullying crew. With his lanky frame and mischievous grin, Charno brought a sly menace to the group that terrorized Arnie. He wasn't the leader, but he was unforgettable in his own right. Charno's career, though, was far more complicated than it looked. After making a splash in the horror genre with Friday the 13th Part 2 and later Iron Eagle, he seemed destined for steady work. But in 1990, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, a battle that sent him in and out of psychiatric hospitals. The stigma around mental illness in Hollywood made it even harder to find roles. The 1980s also brought darker habits. Charno admitted to using stimulants to cope with the pressures of the industry, a dangerous cycle that only worsened his mental health. Then, in 2000, tragedy struck. His brother died of a drug overdose. The loss pushed him into a deep depression that nearly ended his career entirely. And yet, Charno turned his suffering into advocacy. He began speaking openly about mental health, using his story to reach others who felt alone in their struggles. Though he mostly works in small roles today, his courage off-screen has given him a different kind of legacy. Stuart Charno played Don Vandenberg in Christine, 1983, when he was 27 years old. Today, in 2025, he is 69 years old, still active in film and mental health advocacy, with an estimated net worth of about $1.5 million. John Stockwell as Dennis Gilder. In Christine, 1983, John Stockwell played Dennis Gilder, the loyal best friend who tried desperately to save Arnie from his deadly obsession. He was the voice of reason, the athletic kid who seemed to have it all together, and yet powerless to stop his friend's tragic downfall. Stockwell's performance gave the film its heart, showing us that horror isn't just about monsters. It's about watching someone you love slip away. But Stockwell's real life was far from perfect. Just months after Christine was released, he was arrested for drug possession. What looked like a rising career almost collapsed overnight. He admitted later that the partying, the drugs, and the late-night chaos nearly destroyed him before he even had a chance to succeed. Though he pulled himself together, scars remained. The pressures of Hollywood followed him through the 1990s. By 2000, his marriage fell apart in a storm of rumors about infidelity. For a man who had played the good guy on screen, the personal failures behind the curtain were crushing. Yet Stockwell reinvented himself. Moving behind the camera, he found new success as a director with hits like Blue Crush, 2002, and Into the Blue, 2005. For the first time, he controlled the story instead of being controlled by it. He later admitted that Christine had saved him in its own way. Without that role, he might have never found the second act of his career. John Stockwell played Dennis Gilder in Christine, 1983, when he was 22 years old. Today, in 2025, he is 64 years old, working as a director and producer, with an estimated net worth of around $10 million. Keith Gordon as Arnie Cunningham. Arnie Cunningham is the heart of Christine, 1983. The awkward, bullied teenager who transforms into someone dark, confident, and ultimately doomed. Keith Gordon delivered that transformation with chilling precision, turning Arnie into one of Stephen King's most unforgettable on-screen characters. Watching his slow descent was painful, but also mesmerizing. For Gordon himself, life wasn't without tragedy. In 1995, he was struck in a severe bicycle accident that fractured his neck and forced him into spinal surgery. Recovery was long and painful, and for a time, He wasn't sure he'd ever return to filmmaking. The physical scars lingered, but so did the fear. Even after he healed, Gordon struggled with burnout. By 2010, years of overwork caught up with him, and he stepped away for his health. Hollywood is merciless, and for someone as driven as Gordon, admitting exhaustion felt like failure. But it also gave him the chance to reset and rediscover why he loved storytelling. Despite the setbacks, Gordon's directing career flourished. He made acclaimed films and went on to direct television episodes of Dexter and Homeland, even earning an Emmy for his work. The shy kid who once played Arnie became a respected voice behind the camera, proof that pain doesn't have to define the end of your story. Keith Gordon played Arnie Cunningham in Christine, 1983, when he was 22 years old. Today, in 2025, he is 64 years old, living in Los Angeles with an estimated net worth of around $3 million. Alexandra Paul as Lee Cabot. Think back to Christine, 1983. Arnie's life was spinning out of control, but there was one person who tried to pull him back, Lee Cabot. Alexandra Paul, just 20 at the time, played her with quiet strength, smart, compassionate, and unwilling to be another victim of Christine's jealous rage. She wasn't just the girlfriend. She was the anchor, the only light in Arnie's darkening world. But Alexandra's own journey was marked by heartbreak. In 1995, she suffered a miscarriage, a loss that pushed her into depression. It was a private tragedy, hidden beneath the smile of a rising star. For years, she carried that pain quietly, even as she kept working. Like many young actresses, she also faced brutal pressure to look perfect. Paul admitted to extreme dieting in her early career, slipping into dangerous eating disorders. What the audience saw on screen as radiant beauty often came at the cost of her health and peace of mind. Then, in 2005, a surfing accident nearly drowned her. For a moment, her life hung by a thread, but instead of breaking her spirit, it fueled her activism. She threw herself into causes, fighting climate change, championing women's rights, even getting arrested in 2018 during a protest. She refused to stay silent, no matter the risk. Alexandra Paul played Lee Cabot in Christine, 1983, when she was 20 years old. Today, in 2025, she is 62 years old, living in Malibu with her husband, still acting while leading environmental campaigns, with an estimated net worth of about $4 million. Mark Popple as Tino. Tino may not have been the leader of the bullies in Christine, 1983, but Mark Popple made him stand out with a mix of nervous energy and cruelty. At 25 years old, he gave the gang of tormentors extra bite, making Arnie's descent into darkness all the more believable. Popple's own life, though, quickly turned into its own horror story. In 1985, just 2 years after the film, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. The illness worsened under Hollywood pressure, and in 1987 he attempted suicide by jumping from a hotel window. He survived but suffered broken bones and minor brain trauma, a turning point that forced him into long-term psychiatric treatment. Cocaine and amphetamines only fueled the spiral. His substance abuse alienated friends and colleagues, and he lost major opportunities, including a role in Top Gun that slipped away because producers couldn't trust him. Each setback dug the hole deeper, and by the early 1990s, depression gripped him again after his father died of cancer. But somehow, Popple found a path forward. Through art therapy and writing, he regained stability. In 2015, he published a memoir, Shadows on the Set, confronting his demons publicly for the first time. These days, he channels his experience into teaching acting at community colleges, passing on lessons born from both talent and tragedy. Mark Popple played Tino in Christine, 1983, when he was 25 years old. Today, in 2025, he is 67 years old, living quietly in Santa Cruz, with an estimated net worth of about $1.2 million. Douglas Warhit as Randy. You might remember Randy from Christine, 1983, one of the unlucky victims who crossed paths with Arnie's car and paid the ultimate price. Douglas Warhit, just 28 at the time, gave Randy a nervous, edgy presence that made his demise all the more memorable. It was one of those small but impactful performances that horror fans never forget. Warhit's real life, however, was far more tragic than any role he played. In 1979, years before Christine, he survived a small plane crash on his way to a TV shoot. The accident left him with spinal injuries and a long-term dependence on painkillers. By the early 1980s, opioid addiction nearly consumed him, and only a mandatory rehab program in 1984 pulled him back, ironically right before he joined Christine. The pain didn't stop there. In 1995, his younger sister died suddenly from food poisoning, a freak tragedy that devastated him. Depression followed, and by 1998, his marriage collapsed after a public cheating scandal splashed across tabloids. For someone who never had Hollywood fame to protect him, the exposure cut especially deep. Legal troubles added more weight. In 2000, Warhit was sued in a contract dispute with a production company, which forced him into temporary bankruptcy. Just as he was trying to rebuild, lung cancer struck in 2003. 3 years of grueling chemotherapy and radiation drained his body but not his spirit. He still managed to finish a final stage play before the disease claimed him. Douglas Warhit played Randy in Christine, 1983, when he was 28 years old. He passed away in 2006 at the age of 51 from lung cancer complications, leaving behind an estimated net worth of about $800,000. His death was quiet, almost hidden. But to those who knew him, the loss was enormous. Just like Randy and Christine, Warhit's life was cut short far too soon. 42 years later, the cast of Christine has faced twists as chilling as the movie itself. Do you believe their fate was coincidence or something darker? Join the conversation in the comments and subscribe for more stories you won't want to miss.